It's the little things that get you, boys. Welcome to the channel. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. This is going to be the main meat of it, and I would say probably one of the most fundamental parts of the idea and the concepts we've kind of developed in the married red pill. Hope you're enjoying your morning or afternoon coffee, and we're going to talk about the captain and first officer model. The captain and first officer model is the relationship dynamic. I think I've heard the terms Lindy thrown around it more. If you guys remember, I've talked previously about Ian Ironwood's post on the praxeology of the dominant male. I'm going to pull that up, put it in the chat, because I realized a lot of you guys might not remember this stuff. Somebody actually told me in a comment yesterday that he's like, what book are you reading? And I'm like, if only there was a way, that it would be labeled very clearly on the top right of the window. But that's fine, whatever. We want to get there. The captain first officer model takes the presupposition that most relationships over the eons were male dominated, and those ones have been the time honored, time tested, or tried, tested, and true relationship model over time. There's been some that have been female led, but they tended to still be in their hunter gatherer phase well into the 20th century. So then the second presupposition is that women are becoming an economic force and no longer require provision in general, which is true. Couple studies coming out showing they were just trying to look into the wage gap and offer some complementary information to it. Found out that if you account for lifestyle choices, so take a girl and a guy who both 30, no kids, not married. Girls will tend to earn on average about $1.08 to every guy's dollar. So it turns out a large section of that wage gap is essentially a girl who opts out of the job market for a time, wants to have a family, or maybe doesn't make those amazing choices, whatever. But the end result is most girls don't need provision. So a lot of these, and we call them beta males, and I think this is actually a truer sense of the word than the way most people describe it, is they come with their provision. Hey, I got a good job. I'm really good with family. I've got all these beta traits. Who wants some oxytocin? And then the girl's like, no. But I bring home the bacon. Yeah, bacon's $3 at the grocery store, son. I got it myself. They don't need men anymore. And a lot of guys get really bent out of shape over this because girls just start doing whatever they want without regards to that. I don't see it that way. And the CEO first officer model, or I call it Captain XO, because in Canada we call them the executive officer, but it's the same thing, makes the conclusions that, oh, well, if you don't need a man, why are you so miserable? And it turns out girls actually want a man. So that's the third presupposition, that girls don't need a man, but they want one. And depends on what phase of her life she's in. Maybe she wants one because she wants, she wants to get knocked up. You kind of need a man for that, at least for now. Maybe it's just girls are lonely, want somebody to be around them. Maybe it's just that little bit of dopamine. The alpha traits tend to be heavily skewed right now. And a big part of the problems in the current sexual marketplace and then the current relationship dynamics is that guys haven't adapted to the marketplace. They still think they're working on old order thinking. They still think it's dad working 9 to 5, coming home, and the girl makes him a loaf of bread and vacuums the floor, and it's not that way. And you just have to adapt. So how do we adapt? By going back to the way things used to be. Well, first off, women sexually respond to dominant men. Now, I know that saying women sexually respond to the dominant men is so radical and politically incorrect that many of you reading will struggle with this as a thought. So let me come at it from a slightly different angle and say men are taller than women. If I just write men are taller than women and leave it at that, some feminist reader is going to hunt down my email address and point out that I'm small-minded and offensive for saying so. Clearly, there are some tall women, and stating that men are taller than women is sexist. My angry reader simply wouldn't imagine living with such a bigot as myself, who believes that men are taller than women. After all, she's quite tall herself and knows a man that's of average height who she is taller than. So where do I get such wrong ideas from? Again, this is when you can tell you're not having a good conversation, when somebody looks to the extreme ends of a bell curve to disprove the middle of the bell curve. None of this stuff is about 100% guarantees. There's no guarantees in life. There just isn't. So what it's meant to be is, and this is how you should kind of take this. This is why I always rag on that spot-of-the-tism thing. And I don't even want to give it the cliched thing like offer some nuance or offer, middle ground. It's like, it's none of that. It's generally good practice while exceptions exist. You're aiming at the middle of the bell curve, the 4s, the 5s, the 6s. Maybe there's an objective 3 or an objective 10, which I'd argue women don't. For the most part, they tend to cluster around the mean anyway. So outliers are doubly harder to find with women than with men. So you act in the same way that a 5 out of 10 bell curve element. That means 5 out of 10 bipolar disorder, 5 out of 10 borderline, 5 out of 10 attractiveness, 5 out of 10 attitude. All women are like that is meant in the same context as all guns are loaded. Treat all guns as if they're loaded. All guns aren't loaded. Well, that gun's not loaded. That gun's a toy gun. It can't even shoot real bullets. Yeah. Here's the thing. False positives are much easier to deal with and have much less consequences than false negatives. This is what people don't understand. I mean, girls, I understand it because they speak through their ego. It's youth. They assume as soon as you mention something about women, they assume you're talking about her. And I could sort out 90% of internet arguments right here just by saying, just tell the girl it's not about her and she's the exception. And 9 times out of 10, they'll shut up. So another statement attached to this, women are attracted to taller men, especially to men taller than themselves. Again, quite true. Can't really argue it. It's pretty rare to find a couple where the wife is taller than the husband. An overwhelming majority have a taller husband than the wife, far more than random chance would suggest. Now, it's not saying none of them. Again, same thing. In general, how does it work? 4 to 6 inches taller, I think is how they like to work it out. Although with exceptions, once a girl gets to a certain height, I think it's once she's past 5'10", they tend to be more open to smaller, shorter men because otherwise they've just completely locked themselves out of the sexual marketplace. Anyway, circling back, men are naturally more dominant than women in personal relationships. Leave it at that. Some feminist reader is going to want to hunt down his email and point out that he's small-minded and offensive for saying so. Clearly, there's some dominant women, and simply stating that is sexist. The reader could not imagine living with a bigot such as himself who believes that men are dominant more than women. Then, should he happen to mention that he's quite dominant and his wife Jennifer is quite submissive, well then my angry reader would wonder if Jennifer is okay being trapped in a marriage with my offensive dominance. Frankly, it seems that by making her submissive on purpose, I might be despicable. And that's the other thing too. If you got a happy relationship where you're acting like the dominant male, the girl's getting her dopamine, she's getting her oxytocin, she's happy, you're happy. Well, a girl who will argue with you will automatically think there's got to be something you're doing that's wrong. There's no way she could be happy because I believe my way is happy. Again, it's cope. I'm doing all the right things that my professor taught me. Why am I not happy? Let's add another statement to this. Women are sexually attracted to dominant men, especially to men more dominant than themselves. Dominance and submission are not outlandish games that only happen in sex clubs with leather-clad people whipping each other. Dominance and submission are elements in every single social interaction. And I think a good way to explain this is based on my blog post. I'll put a link in the chat here for this one. I got to make a remembrance of it. Power Games, a primer, or was it a field report? It's a field guide. Power Games. A good way to think about dominance. Now, it's not the most accurate framework, but it's a good one to realize here. Where I make the case, it's a concept I've borrowed from Venkatesh Rao, which he talks about for office politics. You picture every open interaction as an exchange of information, generally missing the emotions of it. But, especially talking to a woman, it's going to fit pretty well onto this two-dimensional chart, with one chart being a status. Am I higher stat? Do I perceive myself as higher status or lower status than the person I'm talking to? And on the other side is harmony. Am I on this person's team or am I against them? And then you can pretty much map most relationship conversations that aren't just strict logistics onto this. Now, what we mean by dominance is if you take the open, or you take the status and harmony, make the harmony 4. Like, we're on the same team. Guy thinks, yeah, she's under my care. She's a relationship with me. We're in it to win it. She's my, bottom bitch. All the stuff you want to say. Same team. I'm higher status. And that tends to be dominance. Now, when you put two elements onto this chart, let's say the other person is against you and they think they're better status. So you're going to end up with acting with dominance. They're going to be acting with insolence. It's not sustainable. And what happens is either one party disengages, which is pretty common, Case in point, the guy arguing, or the feminist steel man that we built up to argue with Ian Wood, or with Athol Kay's thing, sorry. Or one person acquiesces. In this case, there's going to be a status jump. Somebody will establish through all manners of measures that they're higher status than the other person. If it's the girl and they're still against you, then it'll go from contempt to insolence. If it's from the guy's side, it'll go from playful condescension into supplication. Now, most guys end up supplicating, and that's why girls act with such contempt. And then that adds a nice status boost to them. But you keep at it, you still act on same team. If your frame is strong enough, you can actually pull people into your frame. Now, we're talking relationships, not strangers. Don't waste your time on this with people that have not earned the ability to play power games with. It's a gift. And that's where you want to put it, where the guy, you're on the same team, guy's dominant, girl's submissive, supplicative. It's good. Works. So if you're reading, and here's a little don't eat paint warning. If you're reading into the word dominant, a mandate for violence or cruelty or someone submissive to you, then you're purposefully misunderstanding his intent. Not is he saying that all women should be submissive to all men. Frankly, there's no way to even organize that effectively, even if he thought it was a good idea. He's also not saying women are superior to men, or that women are incapable of leadership, or that men are superior to women and they're incapable of leadership. All those statements are the baggage that another person brings. All it is the guy brings dominance, the girl gets her alpha tingles, and she defers to him on matters of importance. That's kind of all it is. But it has to be a willing thing. Like, you can't just... Dominance is always an opt-in situation, and so you really have to bring it properly. And it's one of the few ways that I disagree with that standard PowerPoint MGTOW line, where it's like you're putting, pussy on a pedestal, don't do anything for women, just do it for yourself. That feedback mechanism between the genders is actually a very common thing that's part of our DNA. And it's the way we kind of complement each other. So if you're not able to be dominant around a woman and have her submissive, then there's probably something wrong with your approach. Either you're picking the kind of girl who hasn't opted in yet. Like I said, if you don't attract a girl sufficiently enough with that dopamine that she doesn't even think to go there, then yeah, you're doing it too early. And if you're not doing it enough, you're doing it too late. Again, it's kind of nice to have this nature feedback. Next chapter, I won't belabor the point because I don't think it's going to be that applicable to you guys. But unlearning being male and dominant is evil. That's 9.2. Give it a read on your own. Honestly, it all goes back to frame. If you just realize, like, yeah, I'm an asshole, and you're okay with that. Like, you don't break the law against people. People can opt in or opt out of your life as much or as little as they want to, and you're just doing your thing. You're going to kind of realize that all these pejoratives people throw on it. Oh, that's evil. That's misogynist. It doesn't really faze you. You're like, yeah, so what? Maybe. Are you a misogynist looking for patriarchy? I don't know. I'm just over here having fun. You're welcome to join me if you want to. Most girls won't, but then occasional ones do. And those are the ones you're going to have fun with. That's why the trick to most guys is to approach and meet a lot of women and filter a lot of women through this filter of, do they add value to my life? Are they receptive to dominance and submissiveness? Is there potential here for something long-term? And that's largely what plating is about. Have your fun with as many girls as you can, and then you filter if you want to settle down on the kind of girl who's like more receptive to this stuff. I'm not saying you need to have a pushover. Everybody's going to have their own preference. But just realize, ultimately, if there's a knock at the night, who's getting up with the baseball bat? Well, if it's you, well, there's a premium onto that. And that premium is, yeah, I get to be the final say in these big important decisions because I'm the one taking responsibility for it. And if the girl doesn't like it, well, it's a choice you got to make then, right? So he talks in the captain and first officer model a lot about his relationship with him and his wife. I won't go into that one. I would suggest reading it. It's much better anyway. But the way he describes it here is, in commercial aviation, the first officer is the second pilot, sometimes referred to as the co-pilot of an aircraft. The first officer is second in command to the captain, who's the legal commander. In the event of incapacitation of the captain, the first officer will assume the command of the aircraft. Now, control of the aircraft is normally shared equally between the first officer and the captain, with one pilot normally designated the pilot flying and the other the pilot not flying, or pilot monitoring for each flight. Even when the first officer is the flying pilot, however, the captain remains ultimately responsible for the aircraft, its passengers, and its crew. So in typical day-to-day operations, the essential job tasks remain fairly equal. Now, I don't like when he says equal, because a lot of guys take that to mean, and this is the problem with like things like chore play coming up, the girl will have her sphere of things that she thinks are important. She wants those to be equal. But the sphere of things you find important has some overlap, but they aren't 100% overlapped. Those ones don't count. So it always ends up being more plow horsey. So when you talk about things being equal, I want to say it was no, it wasn't Ultimate Cat. It was, oh, what the hell? Why am I drawing a blank at his name? Archwinger. Great post on this one. We'll see if I can find it. He talks about task significance. When you talk about the equality of doing chores and all this crap, what he says is, and it's a really good point, it's something you should really kind of adopt on your own. Girls don't judge the importance of a task based on its difficulty. They judge a task based on its chance for failure. Like, you know what we talked about before, girls don't like the idea of rejection. You should never turn your girl down in the bedroom because it establishes you're not, you know, sexually prowess, and it kind of causes harm in your relationship. But take that to mean bills. Bills versus doing the dishes. Doing the dishes is drudgery. Everybody hates doing it. I hate doing it. My girl hates doing it. Everybody hates doing it. Take something more important than that, like paying taxes. Now, if the dishes don't get done, yeah, it's annoying. You live in a slob pile for like a day and a half, whatever. But if you don't pay the taxes, people get arrested. So there's consequences to the failure on that, even though it's generally an easier task to do by most people's standards, unless you got complex taxes. So those aren't seen as equal. For a guy, that drudgery of the dishes is absolutely brutal. For a girl, that drudgery of doing the taxes can be absolutely brutal. In that way, you can kind of have equal tasks in which everybody's thinking they got off easier, and the household duties get separated. Again, we're not the same, and this plays out in all manners of places. Something to follow up on this one, and I'm going to put this in the chat. It's called The 3 Dysfunctional Captains and First Officers of the Married Red Pill. We've found over the years, and this is still held true to this day, that there's only 3 real archetypes of men who come in with relationship problems and where they come from. There is the drunken captain with a pissed first officer who's had to take command. And that's the guy that stopped being dominant, added more beta, maybe just got lethargic, down on his luck. Him, it's very easy. Do some self-improvement, get back on the horse. The girl will naturally fall back into line. Wonderful situation. Happens to the best of us. Again, this is why you just can't out-alpha everything. Like, there's going to be hard times. Even if you were the captain of the football team, absolute alpha, run into some medical problems in your 40s, watch how quickly everybody turns on a guy. Once he's been through one piece of hardship, 20 years of marriage, always been the rock, always been the oak, always been the absolute best thing, built up so many relationship tokens, down on his luck once. Not only will his girl sometimes look onward to kind of frame him as frame herself as the victim and him as the abuser and her to find a new man, but often family, and sometimes even the guy's family, will encourage it. It's a very, I would argue, out of all the ways that guys be red-pilled, I think this one is far worse than like silly stuff like a bipolar girl treating you like crap or even getting stabbed. Imagine finding out your entire social network, including your family, doesn't have your best interest at heart, and they actually would like throw you under the bus just for a little bit of female camaraderie. It's not nice, man. Anyways, the second type is the captain and the constantly complaining passenger. And this is just a girl that refuses to let a guy lead. This one, like I said, this is about boundary enforcement. Guys end up walking on eggshells. Guys end up being very scared of the girl's feelings. And for this part is mostly just... Actually, a good way to put it is it's kind of made a cliche. Most guys who have this story always say at one point, once they've read through Athol Kay and stuff, is I used to be alpha and I slowly became beta. It's that betaization with 1,000 concessions. And the answer to this one, just be more alpha. Tap more alpha onto it. Be more aloof. Be willing to burn everything to the ground. And this is kind of the inspiration for my cooking video. I think it was pancakes. Yeah, German pancakes and Operation Scorched Earth. Operation Scorched Earth tends to work for these kind of guys. Now, you may not win the girl back. She's seen so much baggage over such a period of time, or she's unable to see the gifts that you bring that you just can't salvage it, but whatever. Third type is the girl who never actually wanted a captain, never wanted a captain at all. And these are the guys that end up marrying the first girl that touches them, acts nice, gets what she wants, and then treats them like garbage. She wanted a pushover. Maybe it's daddy issues. Maybe it's her mom trained her that you want a man who's subservient. They're just not happy, and there's nothing you can do about it, and they refuse to be happy. So for the most part, the map for these guys involves building up your value to realize that you're worth more than this until you look over at that girl staring at you, nagging at you like Karen for the 10th year in a row, thinking, I'm not put on earth to put up with her nonsense, and they just leave. I've very rarely seen one of these girls kind of get their act together, but anything's possible. And he kind of reflects that in the book here. You read on later where wives want to be the first officer. He makes kind of the case himself in here. Being the captain means being more responsible. Now, I do want to preface this because that adding more responsibility thing, that taps into the Jordan Peterson idea of, oh, more responsibility. You need more responsibility. Be very careful taking on more responsibility, because this building a better mousetrap kind of thing, a lot of married guys end up running into this problem. A lot of relationship guys too. They treat it as a covert contract. Well, if I just do more, take more responsibility around the house, then she'll come around. Again, typical covert contract that if I do what I think she wants me to do, then everything will good and I'll have a problem-free life. Standard nice guy stuff. And that's not what he's talking about at all with the being more responsible. Girl has to earn it. Your responsibility is a gift. You're taking away all the anxiety out of life, or at least the, non-useful anxiety. Now, coming with that comes the responsibility from the girl being sexually available, being pleasant, generally being a value add to your life, right? So when he says being more responsible is the key to being the captain, you have to remember it's all about being earned. If you're not getting yours in a relationship, then offering this is just rewarding bad behavior. Now, he never put this caveat in there, but we've had years in the trenches, and this is how it always plays out. So I kind of want to put like a asterisk on that one, that just be careful, because those 2 years marry red pill Rambos, this is what they end up doing. They do this, they take on more responsibility, they double down on more beta behaviors, and then 2 years later, they're like, I don't understand. What's a shit test, and why does my wife hate me still? I tried everything. You're like, no, you didn't. You're not the prize. You just looked at one thing and it reflected what you wanted to say. And so, yeah. Cause your own problems. That's why it's always good to have somebody to ping ideas off of, because guys, once you're calibrated to notice it, are very good at seeing through other guys' bullshit. Anyways, hey guys, glad you're sticking around so far. We'll do some more chit chat here in a minute. Let's just see if we can get through this at a decent hour. I'm trying to keep these under 40 minutes because, like I said, we don't have all damn day. I could talk about this stuff for hours, but we all have things to do. So his next question is, how do you know if your wife is submissive? You start asking reasonable requests and say thank you when she does them. If she does them and looks generally happier after the task, then you probably got a submissive streak in her. The key phrase was reasonable requests. You need to stop thinking of submissive as a groveling female. It's not. If she likes playing the help and support role, she's probably submissive. If she does nice stuff for you without asking, she's probably submissive. That's why a lot of guys say a girl who cooks is seen as a good thing, because that's why girls are so dead set against it when you see a lot of like hate online. Tell girls that cooking is a good thing and you'll find all the feminists and Karens coming out of hiding. But yeah, little things like this. Other than sexually, what do you do to keep a man happy? If a girl can't answer that question, she's not submissive and generally belongs to the streets. She might be fun to sleep with. She might be great company. She could be a good friend. But without that, it's reasonable to expect that you're putting a time limit on your relationship. I mean, there's going to be time limits anyway, but a shorter time limit. It's just really not good policy to have a girl who's got a dominant streak in her that refuses to be submissive for the right man. And that's the thing. If they haven't decided on you being their hypergamous best option, they're not going to be submissive. So writing's on the wall. It's got two options. One, she doesn't want to submit to anybody, or two, she doesn't want to submit to you. I would argue, who cares? Act as if she doesn't want to submit to you. Send her on her way. Both can be true. Both can not be true. You just realize that, yeah, okay, so take a look, have some self-reflection. What am I doing that's not getting the right dopamine response in a girl? Fix that. At the same time, this one's not valuable to me, and she's just turning this into a power struggle. I wish you a good life, sir. Take off. I'll see you later. That's how the filtering process works. A lot of guys talk about vetting women, but vetting is horrible. Vetting is picking like a shopping list of things. Well, does she go to church? Does she have the right thing? Is her hair the right length? Is she not leaning in? Blah, blah, blah. Is she wearing white heels? All this stuff. Here's the problem. Let's say a girl has all those qualities that good women have. The sundress, the summer hat, all of it. And let's say she just refuses and she treats every interaction with you like a power struggle. Well, how good did your vetting do? Let's say she pulls that out after 6 months, after you decided after 3 she's the one. What do you do then? Again, all you got left is boundary enforcement, and that's really what you got to do. He suggests here you can also try out small moments of dominance and watch her reactions, like, hey, we're going out to the movies or whatever, and just assume it's all going to happen. If she's acting more interested and attentive because of your dominant display, she's probably submissive. If she turns everything, or if you don't have to turn into the boss of everything overnight, and micromanaging is tediously annoying to both parties, just start setting the tone once in a while and see how she reacts. Again, trust your own eyes. Here's a good part too. So how to find a submissive wife. I'm not going to read the quotes here because we already know this one. You don't find one, you make one. Girls don't know they could be submissive to a strong man until they do. So if you're running into girls that are all boss bitch, well then yeah, that's just their boss bitch. They don't see you as their top option. Girls may not even see that until they're in their 20s, late 20s, the epiphany phase, that sort of stuff, which is fine. I mean, if you're a guy in his late 30s, almost 40, girl in her late 20s isn't the worst thing ever. So if a girl's not willing to settle down till late 20s, then that's fine. Just, see when you get there. Maybe you get lucky. You date enough girls, you'll eventually get to that point where one of them's like at 22, 23 and thinks of you as a nice one. You guys date for 5, 6, 7 years and then maybe settle down and have a family. That's fine, but they don't come out of the box submissive to you. Girls won't submit to the random guy. They're just going to assume that every guy is a chode because most of the guys they date are absolute losers. And the few that aren't have too much alpha capabilities in them, and so they just don't stick around anyway. So it kind of builds like a jaded exterior. To break through that will take time. And it's always going to be little give and takes. That little bit of dominance that gets her wet, that little bit of comfort that makes her comfortable. Do you get any reciprocals from that? If yes, great. Keep going. If not, no. And this is the process of plating. You're doing this over a year with multiple women. And then of them, let's say you've dated 20 women over the last 10 years. Well, dated. Out of those, maybe 2 start doing little things. Like I'd say the biggest indicator if you got a girl that may be worth keeping is she cleans your house for you when she doesn't have to. Then you're like, okay, so these ones are receptive to it. And then you kind of go the next step. Doing these little dominant submissive things, see if they work out. And that's the vetting process. Of course, it's not vetting, it's just boundary enforcement. If she stops acting like that, then whatever. He talks a bit about alpha male, the group, and the family stuff. Family discipline is self-discipline. This is more parenting strategies as opposed to repairing your sex life, but very simple stuff. Unified front against the kids. You guys can disagree. You disagree in private. If somebody takes the lead on something when it comes to parenting kids, you just follow their lead and you fix it afterwards. You may lose a battle here and there. There may be something that the one parent's doing that's really bad, but over the long term, a unified front is going to matter much more so. Something to think about too for a lot of guys who have not been attentive fathers over the years. You're going to kind of want to get into that one slowly, but mostly the person though you're disciplining isn't the kids, it's not the wife, it's disciplining yourself. And you're setting the tone. Again, your frame becomes so strong with your discipline that other people are drawn to it. Last part on this one is act, don't react. Here's something else. A lot of you guys may talk about this and you kind of get it wrong. It's always, we bring up Rolo or myself or Rich or John or Troy or any of us bring up, okay, so in general you want to do this, you want to do that. The strategy here is effective for these reasons. And then some guy will come back, well, what if she does this? What if she does this? What if she does this? That's a reactive mindset. Well, what do I do? If she does X, do I do Y? Well, if she gets bitchy, do I pull my boundaries? If I do this, does she do that? And they always want this reactive form of doing things. And that's not even, I don't even put that within the alpha beta thing. It's just not attractive. Like if you want to be top tier, alpha qualities is act, don't react. If something bothers you, you act on it. But every time the girl holds holds a temper tantrum, you change, then who's controlling who? Now, I know I know this might be a bit of a controversial topic, but I remember talking about it before. Abu American, one of the Muslim guys in this space, his girl was throwing a temper tantrum, and so he smashed her phone. There, that'll teach her. Again, that's reacting. Every time she gets a temper tantrum, you break her phone. First off, the violent part of it, you don't really need to go that far. It's kind of a bit of loss of frame, but whatever. Not here to judge that part. I'm just saying, every time you do that, you're encouraging a girl. Here, have some drama. Just start some shit first. If you want more shit, that's the way you go about it. If you want less, don't react. Make yourself scarce. It takes two people to have a fight. Worst case scenario on a fight, you just leave. I'm going to Starbucks, I'm grabbing a coffee, I'm taking the kids, grabbing some ice cream. That's actually a big one, especially if the girl's fighting with you in front of the kids. Just take the kids, leave the house. We'll come back when you calm down. Then you tell the kids, you know, hey, mom just hasn't eaten yet. She's a bit cranky. Let's go get some ice cream, guys. And you come back, leave with a smile, come back with a smile. You've established that, yeah, you don't get to have fun with the family. You don't get to be a part of the family unless you act in concert with the family. We're not here for your emotional highs and lows. Again, it's a discipline thing. Sometimes it's hard. A girl who's known you for that many years probably knows all of your red button options. So, adding to here, at work, just underlining this point again, I'm outlining a husband and wife relationship rather than all men or women. Acting like a man bear pig at work isn't the idea at all. I work with a ton of women. I supervise some. I'm peers with some, and I've always been supervised by women. Look at him go. What a flex. Currently, my job assignment's being part of a team. Now, he doesn't pretend to be female or blend in by being silent. He used to be like that, but he's moved on from it well and truly. So just realize the goal is not to dominate all women around you in the workplace. It's not sound strategy, and it's not going to work in the long term. Learn to understand womanese, but speak in Manglish. Just have boundaries, same as anything. Don't worry if the girl sees you as dominant or not. Again, we've talked about this in the previous books about hierarchies. A corporate environment, for the most part, has a very set hierarchy and the social norms are established. It's only in the home that they're kind of free-flowing and nobody really knows. That's straight from When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, Manuel Smith. It's also one of the previous series in the Sidebar. I'd suggest you go back and check it out. But in the workplace, the hierarchy is set. It's established. So you play with the rules you're given there. You can't build your own. And that's why being good at work is not the same as being good at home. If you're good at working within a structure, you may not be good at building your own structure. And that's why you can't apply the same principles at work as you can at home. So just be aware. If the rules are there, learn to maximize your playing within the rules, bending the rules when you need to, breaking them otherwise. It's the whole other topic though. But at home, you're creating the framework that your relationship relies on. And the captain first officer model has been the one that's worked the longest over the longest period of time. Chapter 10 is Be a Nice Guy with a Hard Edge. Now this is like a controversial aspect of this because the alpha with the side of beta is what so many guys do when they think they're being more dominant in their relationships, but in reality the girl's just kind of like going along with it because he doesn't push any boundaries or doesn't hit the hard things. Sometimes being dominant, you're going to make your girl cry. And if you're not okay with that, close the show now, hit the like button, and I'll see you later. The betaization trap, he kind of goes into a little bit here, but I would argue that Franco does it way better in Practical Female Psychology. Where here he talks about where it's like the death by 1,000 concessions like Carl talks about. Trying to do everything possible to make her happy and being endlessly nice to her, you undo what created her initial attraction to you. Again, he talks about it like it's 100% guy responsibility, and he doesn't realize that it's kind of the process. Women are kind of hardwired for this path, and I would argue that's a much better one. So take this section, like read it, go through chapter 10, take it with a grain of salt. How did the process go? So off the top of my head, again, Practical Female Psychology, James Franco. Is it James or David Franco? Anyways, the first part is fitness tests, which he's going to talk about in here, or shit test, testing the guy to see if he can put up with all kinds of nonsense without getting too ruffled. Again, act, not react. Second part of that is get him to be vulnerable and commit. And this is where I want the guys to express their feelings more. She meets that alpha guy, makes her tingle. She wants to get as much beta from him as possible to know that he's hooked. Next part is putting him to work. That's the chore play. That's the get a good job. That's do what a real man would do. Next phase turns into nothing is ever good enough. And that's where everything he's doing isn't good enough. He's become fully validation needy on her. And so he tries harder. He doubles down on all these beta behaviors because she responded well to it in that second phase. And then in the third phase, he keeps trying harder. She gets more stuff, which is great. The next phase, self-determination. I'm a strong, independent woman. You're abusing me, and I'm a victim, and I'm going to leave and go find myself a pool boy. A much better one, but it's good to know in here as well. Like, he deals with fitness tests, aka shit tests. They start fairly small, but over time they can grow larger and more demanding. The reason they do that, by the way, is because you're rewarding bad behavior. So if you don't know, a fitness test is just testing if that dopamine response she gets to your alpha characteristics are real. Again, women have something called the innate skepticism bias, and they automatically distrust low-value signals, of which many alpha ones are. So generally they respond as if it's a fake signal to kind of suss out whether it's fake or whether it's not. Like, you're testing the structural integrity of a man's alpha frame or whatever you want to call it. I don't really care. They start small, and if you quash them right out of the gate, either you can nuke them, like completely not play, or you just pass them. Either way works. You tend to get less overtime. But an overtime, because a lot of guys have done it as an act. Pickup artists were notorious for this, by the way. They were able to put on a nice alpha show for like an 8-hour stint. But then when it's day after day after day, and the girl sees you in your underwear that you've been wearing for 2 weeks, or all those unattractive things you do, it starts to slowly whittle away at it. And this is why her instinct will always beat your purposeful action. It's just the way it works. And then over time, they get harder and they get worse, and you fail more and you fail more. And that's at the point that even when you start adding the alpha qualities back into your life, things get worse before they get better, because all she's seen is this. If she gets crankier and crankier, you're eventually going to acquiesce. And it's going to take a huge leap forward. Twice as hard as it's ever going to be until you reestablish the norms in your relationships. He has some strategies on passing them here. What is and what is not a fitness test? This is a good one too, because a lot of guys treat respect as if it's a shit test, and they're not the same thing. So small requests like, hey, can you get me a glass of water? That's like the classic one. A girl's legs aren't working. Just occasionally, she'll throw out some request to get you to do something, to supplicate to her. And if you're already up there doing it, that's fine. You got to play it. You got to be cognizant of the dynamic at play here. Sometimes a girl's just saying stuff to see if you'll do it. They don't really care. Doesn't really want a glass of water. She just wants you to say that. In which case, are your legs broken? Could be an easy answer. That's a quick, pass of a fitness test. Stuff that's not, though, is just a girl berating you. Those aren't shit tests. Disrespect is not a shit test. A shit test is a way of testing if her getting the tingles over you is real. It's not the same thing. I made the argument that being a really good punching bag is not alpha. It's not passing a fitness test. It's not. Girls who like batting their eyes and acting like the little girl. I'm getting emotional about this thing. Basically testing to see if you'll acquiesce if a girl says she's getting angry, reacting. Testing you for reactivity is the key to this one, right? Anyways, he's got a nice little list here. I would suggest go through the book, read it. Ooh, here's a good one. We don't talk about this enough. The remodel the house test. The house is fine, it's not broken, but she somehow needs something torn out and rebuilt with something more expensive. Doesn't add as much value with anything. Again, a lot of these tests are pathed just by understanding the power of the word no, which for some reason guys haven't been taught this in elementary school. I blame those filthy liberals. Yeah. So the quick and dirty rule he talks about is if you wouldn't put up with it on a girl on the second date, why are you putting up with her? And if you can have that certain amount of aloofness to it, it's going to really help you along. That's a good rule of thumb to take on there. Next part here is that nice guys actively strategize to be taken advantage of. Husband nice, and there's like 4 ways that this plays out. The husband's nice and the wife is nice. Both husband and wife split the chores together. Great. Husband nice, wife mean. Wife's too tired to do anything and has a headache. Husband has to do all the chores and make a quick dinner. Husband mean, wife nice. Husband watches TV all night and complains about the wife. The wife does all the chores and makes dinner. Or husband mean, wife mean. Nobody does anything, takeout's ordered. Now it seems clear that having a husband and wife be both nice to each other and mean to each other is not the ideal setup. Obviously both being mean is unpleasant. But the options where half plays nice and gets screwed over while the other half plays the mean card wins a servant for a day and can be tempting once in a while. Now imagine a real relationship where this gets played on over and over in an iterative sense. This is like a game theory thing here. Nice guy's strategy are simple. Always play the nice card no matter what happens, whether the wife is nice or mean. In which case you're actually conditioning your wife to be mean to you more often than not. A great thing is the tit for tat strategy. Play the nice card, play the nice card. If she plays the mean card, you play the mean card until she plays the nice card. Mapping this to a situation is going to take way too much time, so I'm just giving like a scant bit on this again. Go through the book, you'll see it. It'll make more sense to you. He kind of explains why nice guys are addicted to the wrong strategies, and he talks about the tit for tat solution in much more detail than we talk about here. And then he ends it off with being a nice guy with a hard edge. So if you've been locked into the nice guy routine for several years and having a non-existent sex life, there's no point trying to ask the wife to be nicer and offer up sex more often. Like I've said many times, talk is pointless and changing behavior with action is a much faster route and is often the only tactic that works anyway. Next part in here, we're going to end it here. We're running on time, but behavior modification 101. This is the part where everybody complains about manipulation. So here's a cliffhanger for you. Next week, chapter 11, behavior modification. Everything is a behavior and manipulation. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. We're going to talk about how to manipulate women to get your way with them. That evil misogynist stuff. You know what I mean? Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this so far. Again, this is one of the longer series. It's 26 chapters full of condensed information. The stuff I'm talking about here is crib notes. You're not just going to be able to listen to this stuff and know what you're doing. You really have to go through the material, and I'd suggest if you haven't bought it yet, go get Married Man's Sex Life Primer by Athol Kay, give it a read, and then come back to this series and read it through as if it's Cliff Notes. It's going to give you a much better understanding, and a lot of the things that we found that haven't mapped well to guys' male action plans over the years, I'll put in the pieces there that, yeah, this works better, this works worse, etc., etc. So on that note, we're going to call it. Hit like, hit subscribe. Don't forget the bell notification icon, because sometimes I'll give you maybe a day's head up when one of these things are coming. They're usually Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. And I'll talk to you later. Let's do the end card thing. Yeah, let an empty space. She'll try to fit in. Yeah, you guys are getting it. John, you're asking, what do I mean when I say don't eat paint? This is actually a good one to know. Don't eat paint was a reference to every time you would give strategies like this and advice, everybody would say, well, what about that outlier situation that's going to screw everything up? So don't eat paint was the idea that you had to tell people not to eat lead paint, even though they knew it was like poisonous as hell. But because you're so worried about the lowest common denominator that you give that warning out anyway, which basically encourages the lowest common denominator people to stop thinking for themselves. So arguably, when I say don't eat paint, it's kind of a joke saying, you got to stop telling me what to worry about the 10 out of 10 losers out there. We're here for guys who are in it to win it. And you guys are a switched on audience. So you deserve better than that. At least I hope you do. And if you eat paint, if you listen to some random guy on the internet and just apply things without using your brain, well, you were going to fail anyway. It just sped the process along. Anyways, cheers, guys.